Thought I'd do a little review today about a watch I recently picked up. It's a Steinhart GMT type watch. It's a Ocean 39 vintage GMT premium Pepsi ceramic insert on it. It is homage to the very first Rolex GMT introduced in, I think, 1954. And it ran until about 59. The reference 6542 Big Crown. It had a Bakelite bezel for a few years, and then they started using the aluminum bezel. And this watch here is meant to be a homage to that very first Rolex GMT. And here's a photo of it. So here's your typical reference 6542, the Bakelite bezel, very early GMT, and you can see the resemblance that Steinhart was going for. And the Steinhart again. I think they got pretty close to mimicking that Rolex thing. And I've had it for a few weeks now, and so I've had a chance to kind of, see what it was all about. I like Steinhart as a brand. I bought many watches directly from Steinhart, and they've come to me in various watch deals, and they're good flipping fodder, so to speak. I mean, they've got a huge following. Everybody likes them. They're a solid watch, great value. And so I thought, why not? I'll give the watch a try. And after having it, like I say, a few weeks, I've really come to kind of appreciate it for what it is. Aside from the homage thing to the Rolex, the 6542, which is neither here nor there. It's just what it is. Steinhart does homage watches. So this watch here, it retails for 596 euros, and then if you live in the EU, you have the privilege of paying a 19% value-added tax, VAT they call it, which brings it up to $710 on their website. What that means for we Americans, we don't pay that tax because we are not in the EU. So we pay $596, which is around, depending on the exchange rate, 700, low 700s. Okay, so that's how much these watches cost. And for that much money, I think they're a bargain for what you're getting. Let's go over some of the specs real quick. The case diameter is 39 millimeters. The lug to lug is approximately 47 millimeters this way. Thickness is about 13 millimeters, and the bracelet width is 20 millimeters. So it's a very compact watch, good for somebody with a small to medium sized wrist like me. Here it is compared to a 39 millimeter Explorer 1 Mark II that I got as a gift from my lovely wife, actually, for Christmas. And you can see they're very close in size. And here's a Submariner, or actually a Sea Dweller 40 millimeter. And you can see that, well, let's do this. You can see that they are pretty close in size also. The sub is a little bigger, of course. But anyway, this watch here, it's running an ETA 2893.2 or -2. And I think that Steinhart assigns SW330, and they call it their premium movement. And in actuality, it is a Èlaborè, is, I believe, how it's pronounced. It's French. For ETA's mid-grade movement. So they have the standard, the Èlaborè, and their top movement. And then beyond that, you can get the top movement and at a chronometer rating. So this movement here is slightly upgraded from the standard movement. There are some internal differences. And the premium that Steinhart is referencing, I believe it refers to the fact that they decorate the movement. So when you look at this, it's got a nice display case back, sapphire. When you look at that, you'll see the gilt rotor, the semi-skeletonized rotor, and the engraving of Steinhart's markings on there, and some nice stippling or perlage on the back plate there. I don't know if you can see that. See that machining in there. They've gone in here and prettied it up. There's some blued steel screws. You know, they've definitely spent a little time making the movement more presentable because of the display back. So that's a good thing. Now it's got a unidirectional bezel, which is kind of a on a GMT, usually you have the bezel can turn either way, and it's a quick turn. This one's a regular diving bezel, a unidirectional, and a lot of little clicks, probably 120, something like that. It's Steinhart's typical bezel. It's a little hard to turn. It's kind of stiff, but it doesn't have hardly any back play, and it is solid, right? So it's a good bezel. Screw down crown, screw down case back, heavy oyster bracelet knockoff. And the clasp is kind of it's an upgraded clasp. It's got thick, it's stamped, and it's nice and thick. It's still got the old school micro adjustments, and there's no quick adjustment on it. So it's pretty basic, but it's a good, solid, competent bezel, or excuse me, bracelet with a flip lock. And you know, it's not the best bracelet, but it's certainly not the worst. And considering the price point of this watch, it's very decent. Brushed and polished, much like a Rolex. It's got nice polished slab sides. There's some chamfering underneath here. The profile's pretty thin. There's a slight downward curve. I would have liked to have seen more. See, here's my Explorer. You can see the downward curving. And what this does when you have these straight lugs is it kind of creates a little gap like that. See where my thumb is? And so if you can curve that down, it seems to eliminate that. But the watch being only 13 millimeters thick, it sits pretty flat on my wrist. So that's not really that big of an issue, but I've heard people complain about that. It's got the nice ceramic Pepsi bezel. Loom bright loom on the dial and the bezel. So the bezel is fully loomed. Nice patina on the loom. That's something you either like or you don't. You know, I don't mind it. It's a vintage look that they're going for. So I understand why they did it. The dial's a nice kind of a matte dark gray, and it's got a nice brown tinge to it. I think they were kind of trying to simulate a tropical age dial where the sun will fade the old gilt dials on these old Rolexes, and it'll take on this brownish tinge. They call it tropical. The GMT function is typical for the 2893.2. You have Rolex and Tudor, and then you have everybody else. And Basically, this setting on this GMT function kind of works in reverse of what Rolex does. So let me go through it real quick. And screw the crown. You pull it to the first position. You turn the crown up, and you can see the GMT hand jumping, 1 hour increments. You turn it back the other way, and that quick sets the date, which is kind of cool. And then you pull it out all the way, and you can set your local time hands. And the GMT hand moves in synchronization. So Rolex, when you pull it out to the first position, you are jumping not the GMT hand, you're jumping the actual local time hands. So it jumps in hour increments. And then when you pull it out all the way, you can synchronize both, just much like this ETA movement. So it works a little bit differently. Rolex and company refer to it as a true GMT movement, whereas this is kind of a quasi GMT movement. In reality, it's a preference. It doesn't really make that much of a difference. If you travel a lot, actually the Rolex is a better type movement, but this one is pretty good, and it really doesn't make that big of a difference. There's an extra step involved in setting it. It doesn't really matter, and you pick up quick set, so it's a trade-off. You get it. So anyway, what else about this thing? 316L stainless, bezel, mid-case and case back. It weighs 170 grams. It's pretty, about standard weight for a watch of this size with a metal bracelet. And it's 30 atmospheres or 300 meter water resistance, which is excellent. A lot of GMT watches don't have that high of a water resistance. Most of them are like 100 meters, including the Rolex. So it's good that they up the game on that. So I show the wrist shot. I thought I'd show a couple close-ups and talk about a couple things that I forgot to mention. The big crown on it makes adjustments pretty easy. I like that feature. Obviously, there is a date function, date complication. Dome sapphire on this, as you can see. There is anti-reflective coating on the underside of the crystal. It does have solid end links, thusly. It has the regulation on this. It's not a Rolex superlative, of course, but it's not bad. It's about -5 seconds a day. It's ETA rates this, I think, at -20 plus to +20, so it's not too bad. And let's show a Loom Shot here real quick. Super Luminova, the aged Luminova style is not as, the performance isn't as good, but it's decent. There it is, the green Loom. So I will show a wrist shot now, and you can see how it looks on a 7-inch wrist. So here it is on my 7-inch, 18-centimeter wrist. I think it's a very good size, a very good fit for me. Makes a good, it's a size great for an everyday wear watch for somebody with my size wrist. It's not too big, not overpowering. It's just a nice size, this 39 millimeter. Here's the Steinhart on a Christopher Ward vintage leather strap. Christopher Ward makes excellent straps. They got that quick release spring bar system to make quick strap changes with no tools. I think I like that. I think I'll leave it on there. So anyway, that's my review of the Steinhart GMT. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.